Even when college football is still 7 whole months away, when we talk about the matchups in the field and we've got new, fresh information about the games on the field, oh, it just makes it feel like college football is just that much closer. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, breaking down the game we all love each and every day with you, best discussion, debate, and analysis. The ACC released its Week 1 schedule for 2024 with the added intrigue of Stanford, Cal, and SMU in the league. Nothing speaks of ACC football like the Stanford Cardinal, the Golden Bears of Cal, and of course, the Pony Express, SMU. Let's look at those Thursday night matchups. On August 29th, we've got North Carolina taking on Minnesota. The Heels coming off an 8-5 season. Another disappointing year under Mack Brown. Minnesota at 6-7. The two teams got together for the first time in history in 2022 in Chapel Hill. North Carolina won at 31-13. Behind 414 yards passing from Drake May, they get together in Minneapolis. This time it's former Texas A&M and LSU quarterback Max Johnson, who is supposed to be the starting quarterback at North Carolina, taking on New Hampshire transfer Max Brosmer for PJ Fleck and company, who despite a losing season, again won a bowl game. Minnesota with 7 consecutive bowl wins. They defeated Bowling Green. Minnesota, North Carolina, good under-the-radar matchup on that opening Thursday night. We also have on Thursday night Western Carolina, 7-4 for the Catamounts in 2022, taking on NC State. Wolfpack coming off a fine 9-4 season, although they did drop the bowl game to Kansas State. Grayson McCall takes over at quarterback for MJ Morris and Brennan Armstrong. You've got North Carolina State with a 7-0 all-time series lead against Western Carolina, and they won the most recent matchup of the two schools 41-0 back in 2019. Dave Clawson and Wake Forest coming off its first losing season in a full season, so we're not counting the 4-5 COVID year since 2015. Wake a dismal 4-8. Dave Clawson said at the end of the season, "This is who we are. We must be a 4-8 team," meaning I'm a 4-8 coach. I don't like it. Well, they will start to right the ship, hopefully for them, against North Carolina A&T, a 1-10 team in 2022. We've got Hank Bachmeier possibly taking over at quarterback for Wake. 51 touchdowns, 24 picks in his 2 stays at Louisiana most recently, and more famed at Boise State. Another Thursday night matchup. NC A&T taking on Wake in Winston-Salem. Then on Friday night, look at this little matchup. I like this one. Both teams coming off subpar seasons, but they've got football history on their side. We got TCU and Stanford. And again, does this sound like an ACC matchup? It does not. Horned Frogs at 5-7 after the national championship game appearance. Sonny Dykes trying to right the ship, taking on the Cardinal, who were 3-9. Go back to the 2017 Alamo Bowl. And TCU came back to win a thriller 39-37 against a KJ Costello and Bryce Love-led Stanford team. The 4-star Elijah Brown will probably not be the Stanford starting quarterback, but giving Cardinal hopeful some hope for the future, as Stanford does bring in a top-flight quarterback through the recruiting cycle, but most likely the starter is once again going to be Ashton Daniels for Stanford. The Cardinal host TCU on Friday night to open the season. Also on that Friday night, we've got Elon. They usually have a ACC game on their schedule, coming off a 6-5 campaign. They lost to Wake last year by 20 points. They've got Manny Diaz making his Duke debut. He's back in the ACC, leading the 8-5 Blue Devils, coming off a bowl win against Troy before Mike Elko takes off for Texas A&M. And it's also the debut of Malik Murphy, the big Texas talent, who Manny Diaz lured away from a lot of top-flight programs. So that was his first win of 2024, not defeating Elon. It was getting Malik Murphy. Big arm, big talent, big size, big everything. Malik Murphy is going to be the quarterback for this Duke football team. It should be exciting with Diaz and Murphy and Duke football on that Friday night. Let's move into Saturday, and most of the schedule proceeds here with, again, does this sound like an ACC game? Cal Davis taking on Cal in the Bay Area. UC Davis coming off a 7-4 record. Cal at 6-7. They lost a bowl game to Texas Tech. And Justin Wilcox continues to be the Cal head coach, despite a dismal showing in Pac-12 play. Will he have better luck against the ACC? Justin Wilcox, 21-37 in conference play. And UC Davis did have a game against a Pac-12 team last year, and Oregon State lost 55-7. Cal hopes to fare similarly as Oregon State did against UC Davis in that 48-point rout with either Fernando Mendoza at quarterback. He was the main guy for Cal most of 2023, 14 touchdowns, 10 picks. Then you also have Chandler Rogers coming in from North Texas, where he fired 29 touchdowns and only 5 picks. UC Davis and Cal to open on that Saturday. Let's get to the headliner. Here we go. Clemson, Georgia. The last time they got together was to open the 2021 season in Charlotte. This time they get together in Atlanta. And, of course, that launched Stetson Bennett and Georgia to the national championship, even though JT Daniels was the quarterback on that night in a 10-3 win over DJ Uiagalelei, who was taking over, of course, for Trevor Lawrence. And much has happened in these 3 years. These two teams have a storied history against each other, even though they don't play all the time. They play often. And again, that was a defensive struggle with DJ taking on JT Daniels. Will Clemson return to elite status for the first time since 2020? Did not win the ACC again. Only one of the last 3 conference titles. This, of course, will not count for the conference, but will speak volumes about Clemson's status in college football, taking on Georgia opening night in Atlanta. Much anticipated as well, of course, Austin Peay taking on Louisville. Austin Peay coming off a fine 9-3 season. The Cardinals were 10-4, of course, in an ACC championship game run under first-year head coach Jeff Brom, who comes back not with Jack Plummer at quarterback, but he's picked up Tyler Shough in his 7th season after stops at Oregon and Texas Tech. Tyler Shough has a quarterbacking record of 12-5. So Jeff Brom knows how to coach quarterbacks. Don't be surprised if he's successful with this one. Another incoming transfer in Tyler Shough, and it gets started for Louisville at home against Austin Peay. Now we move on to another marquee matchup with Florida taking on Miami. These two schools, the two fan bases, don't like each other. They last got together 5 years ago. Exciting game in Orlando as the Gators won at 24-20. Guess who the 2 quarterbacks were? Felipe Franks and Jaron Williams. It has been a long time. Gators coming off that dismal 5-7 season. The Canes not much better at 7-6 with a bowl loss against Rutgers, but hope springs eternal with Cam Ward's addition. Of course, the most coveted quarterback in college football in the transfer portal shunned the NFL to come to Miami and rake in some of those NIL dollars. Graham Mertz, 20 touchdowns, 3 picks, led the SEC in completion percentage, as I believe he set a record 73%, so should be a good one. Miami and Florida, who gets off to the hot start and tries to get past that mediocre stage of football that has mired Miami for about 15 years in Florida since Dan Mullen left. All right, let's get on to the Virginia Tech-Vandy game, another ACC-SEC matchup, a little less publicized. Hokies coming off a 9th bounce-back year. Let's not try to oversell it. They really feasted on a weak schedule to go 5-3 in the ACC. They did win a bowl game against Tulane in Brent Pry's 2nd season, taking on, of course, Vanderbilt. Commodores and Clark Lee, only 2-10. Kyron Drones coming back at quarterback for Virginia Tech accounted for 2,600 yards and 22 touchdowns against just 3 interceptions. Again, it's the Hokies and the Commodores week 1 in Nashville. We've got Houston Christian taking on SMU. Mustangs, the American Conference champions in their final year in the American at 11-3 with Rhett Lashley, former Miami offensive coordinator, returning to the ACC. Preston Stone at quarterback, 28 touchdowns, and SMU also picked up a prized quarterbacking prospect in the 24 class in Tyler Aronson. Houston Christian, SMU to open the season in SMU ACC play in 2024. All right, we've got Syracuse hosting Ohio University. Tim Albin has done a fine job with the Bobcats in 3 seasons, 10-3 this past season. Of course, the Cuse with a brand new head coach from Georgia in Fran Brown. The Fran Brown era starts, along with Kyle McCord at quarterback for Syracuse. And I think Cuse fans would be happy with Kyle McCord repeating his 2023 stats at Ohio State. 3,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 picks. OU did defeat a decent Power 5 team last year, Iowa State 10-7. And, of course, Syracuse won the last meeting when these two got together in 2021, 29-9. Syracuse 6-7 last year. The Fran Brown era begins in earnest against the Bobcats. Then we got Kent taking on Pitt. I determined Kent to be the worst team in all of college football in 2023 at 1-11 with an FCS win. They go to Pitt. Pitt could use an easy one to get started in 2024 after a dismal 23 season. Pat Narduzzi and company bottomed out at 3-9 after a 20-7 run the previous 2 years and an ACC championship. Most likely it's Eli Holstein's team as the Alabama product comes in as a 4-star, leaving the Crimson Tide to take over at Pitt. Again, he's not necessarily won the job, but he's the front runner. Pitt hosting Kent to start 2024. Elsewhere on that August 31st, we got Richmond taking on Virginia. The Cavaliers coming off a 3-9 campaign. However, they were competitive. Think about this. Tony Elliott's team had 1-score losses to James Madison, North Carolina State, Boston College, Miami, and Louisville. They also defeated Duke and North Carolina, a couple decent teams. And Anthony Calandria will be back at quarterback after a freshman season, in which he definitely showed some promise. It's Richmond and Virginia. The Spiders won this matchup in 2016. The Cavaliers have won the 2 most recent matchups. And then we move it on to Monday night, where Florida State has secured once again the primetime slot the last 2 years against LSU, a few years ago against Notre Dame, back in 2018 against Virginia Tech. So this has been a spot for Florida State to showcase the program, and Mike Norvell has a lot to showcase. Of course, coming off 13-1, we'll forget the lopsided loss with half his team gone against Georgia. What a year for Florida State football and recapturing the ACC championship for the first time since 2014. But they almost tripped up against Boston College and quarterback Thomas Castellanos, who rushed for over 1,000 yards and gave the Seminoles fits as they barely escaped by 2 points and needed a face mask penalty to keep Boston College's offense off the field to try to kick the game-winning field goal. BC coming off a nice little bounce-back year under Jeff Hafley at 7-6 with a bowl win against SMU. We are in Tallahassee for the opening weekend of college football on that Monday night, BC at Florida State. We will certainly give the entire ACC schedule a look when it's released later this week. This has to get you hyped for college football. Games on the field, and it's only 7 months away. It's the ACC schedule week 1. Your thoughts down below. We'd love to hear from you right here at the Voice of College Football.